Good evening, hooligans. I am Jay Hooligan, and I wanted to be doing more videos, as I said, because this is 2021, and there's been a lot of stuff that we've been talking about from a spiritual growth perspective. And I wanted to put more videos out there because I've taken a long time to get where I'm at, and I feel like there's a lot of perspective that many people kind of have gotten lost in the digital era. There's a lot of distractions. There's a lot of things moving along that drive our attention to many different places, and because of that, it really truly takes us away from developing ourselves to become just the best versions of ourselves. Okay, so I wanted to be doing these videos because there's a lot that I have done over years and years and years of meditation. I started meditation when I was around 12 years old. It's literally been like over half my life that I've been researching and testing a lot of these things. On top of that, I'm a bit of a science geek, which I love that about myself anyway. So researching, understanding data, and acquiring knowledge is a huge passion of mine. So what I want to talk about today is the two parts of your brain. And I know there's many parts of your brain, but it's more as in the metaphorical brain of the higher and lower versions or functions of your brain in terms of development, reactionary responses, etc., etc. In particular, the differences between your emotional side and your logical side. So I wanted to start with what do we got here? Where emotions come from. Okay. In here, and it even says it here is like your brain is completely complex, and it comes from your limbic system, particularly your amygdala. Your amygdala here says helps coordinate responses to things in your environment, especially those that trigger an emotional response. The structure plays an important role in fear and anger. So whenever I talked about, and I have talked about it before, where your nervous system is split between your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is literally your fight or flight system. So the amygdala plays a huge role into that, where your emotions kind of reside. Now, a lot of people, and I mean, this is even from way back when I was in high school, and I was young and dumb with a lot of that too. A lot of people may still believe it, that they want to control emotions, or rather eliminate emotions, and then just take a purely logical perspective, because that's usually the opposite side of how people see it: emotional response versus logical perspective on it. And that's kind of incorrect, because our brains are literally both. Now, the functions of the brain, again, there's different functions of that. However, right, it ties into everything. And even when you start researching a lot of this and just understanding how your body switches back and forth with your systems almost like seamlessly, where you don't even realize it, there's more understanding that can come about with mitigating certain scenarios where you may be reacting emotionally versus of sound mind and judgment. And typically those are the same. And I've said this before in other videos, where if you are reacting or without emotions, you wouldn't be able to make quick decisions. So we wouldn't ever do anything, because we'd just be logically thinking, trying to rationalize what we should do. So emotions are vital to making decisions, especially in quicker responses to our environment when we feel endangered or threatened. So, what else have we got in here? So I really like this article because it does talk about your higher brain functions versus your lower brain functions, and relates it to your upstairs brain and your downstairs brain. It does mention the amygdala as being one of the downstairs brain functions, whereas your upstairs brain function, part of your frontal lobe, controls more of your organization, your rational side. Any problem solving that you got, that comes from there. But again, that whole frontal lobe does actually tie into your emotion as well. So it's all interconnected, right? There are just certain parts of the brain that focus it a little bit more. So what I talk about before is your vagus nerve, and I know there's been a lot of articles out there and people claiming like, oh, the vagus nerve, and some people take it as just like new age hokey type of material to try to read into, but it is actually one of the 12 main cranial nerves in the body. All right, and it's called the vagus nerve because I believe that's Latin. Yep, it says right here. The word vagus means wandering in Latin, which is because it is the longest nerve in of all the cranial nerves. And there have been other articles I came across where they talk purely about it's meant for just to regulate swallowing and taste. That's only partly true because there are other functions of the vagus nerve. So when I talked about two different sides of your nervous system, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight. Your parasympathetic nervous system is the complete opposite, where it's your relaxation. It sets yourself in your body into relaxation mode and healing and recovery mode. Okay, this is how it ties into the vagus nerve. So take a look here. Sensory functions of the vagus nerve are divided into two components. Somatic components, these are sensations felt on the skin or in the muscles, and visceral components, and these are sensations felt in the organs of the body. Sensory functions of the vagus nerve include providing somatic sensation information for the skin behind the ear, the external parts of the ear canal, and certain parts of the throat, and supplying visceral sensation information for the larynx, esophagus, lungs, trachea, heart, and most of the digestive tract. And it also plays a small role in the sensation of taste near the root of the tongue. So there are motor functions of the vagus nerve, including stimulating muscles in the pharynx, the larynx, and the soft palate, which is the fleshy area near the back of the roof of the mouth. Stimulating muscles in the heart, where it helps lower resting heart rate. Starting to sound a little familiar? Relaxation. Stimulating involuntary contractions in the digestive tract, including the esophagus, stomach, and most of the intestines, which allow food to move through the tract. So whenever I talk about, and I'm pretty sure I've talked about in other videos, but whenever I'm talking about how your sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight response, minimizes your nutrients, right? It minimizes your nutrients to prep for fight or flight. So a much quicker flight or fight response by lowering functions of the rest of your body. It's not a good system to be in a long time, which is why we have that other side, which is our parasympathetic nervous system, to help us relax and recover. And it is directly linked to your vagus nerve. So you improve digestion, right? You improve digestion. You get lower heart rate. You know, all of these things, when you start accessing it, can be done. What else we got on the vagus nerve? What else did I find on here? Oh, this was something I found interesting in the same article. Vagus nerve stimulation involves placing a device in the body that uses electrical impulses to stimulate the nerve. It's used to treat some cases of epilepsy and depression that don't respond to other treatments. I really thought that was an interesting study that they have on here. I'd want to read more about it because growing up, I had a lot of depression. You know, and in fact, it was very, very noticeable, especially through my high school years. And yeah, I mean, that was a thing for me back then for a very long time. I had been depressed for a very long time, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And if they've got something like this that maybe they do find possibly vagus nerve damage, which could have caused that, it'd be a really cool treatment to try to look into. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to advocate for it because I don't really know. I'm just talking about for research purposes only. So then just to understand what it does, or just the vagus nerve stimulation that they have on there. So how does this all kind of tie together to, again, your nervous system and meditation and whatnot? So meditation, whenever you're doing your meditation, and I mentioned this beforehand, they usually start you off with deep breathing, deep abdominal breathing. Okay, when you're exercising and you're breathing with the upper part of your chest and you're taking short breaths, you're only utilizing about 30% of your lung capacity. Okay, when you do deep abdominal breathing, you start using more and more of that capacity. When you do that, it actually stimulates that vagus nerve, which does run all the way through your neck and through your throat, all that down through to your intestines and your digestive tract. It stimulates that vagus nerve to help lower your heart rate. That's why when you're out of breath and you're trying to calm down, you literally take deeper breaths to try to stimulate that nerve to send signals to your body. And obviously they're going to be mixed. They're going to be mixed on that. And this is kind of like where I'm talking about, where I wanted to head into with the two different minds. Okay, we need them both. We need that rational problem-solving side. However, when you're stuck inside the whole emotional side of things, you know, a lot of people feel like it's irrational, because that's what it is. It's meant to make quick decisions that may or may not be sound in judgment. All right. I've talked a lot about people that know me. I talk a lot about propaganda, and the purpose of propaganda is to elicit emotional responses. Why? Because then people become predictable. When you become predictable, that means you can be manipulated into moving here and there. It is literally what people do when they go hunting and they're chasing after something that they're hunting. They're using predictability based off of irrational responses to drive an animal or a person or whatever that they're hunting into where they want to go so they can capture it or kill it. Okay? Propaganda really does the exact same thing, but on a psychological level. All right, why is it showing all these things do that for you? Why is it bad for you to be sticking into it and feeding into that, and when you're not actually conscious about what types of media you're consuming, what kind of words they're using, what kind of mentalities are they pushing? You know, I'm very cognizant of the types of words that people use, whether they be, you know, just people on that I know, or news outlets, or on social media. You know, those are all very important things, because they feed into that. Now you start connecting that even further to, say, your memories and events that happen, then purely logical, intelligent people that are constantly live in their upstairs brain, and it accesses, you know, some incident that's connected to, they're emotionally connected to, with a negative stimulus, that will bring about a negative emotional response. So memories, typically, I mean, you can elicit an emotional response based off of a single memory, and most memories do have that emotional response, and similarities that pop up can reignite those. Now, whether those are sound or whether those are logical for you to say, hey, this is an appropriate response, that'll always depend on the situation and who you're dealing with. Okay, but I kind of feel, again, that doing that internal reflection, being able to understand yourself, being able to meditate and clear all the external noise so you can really get to know yourself and who you are, becomes vital when you got a ton of people and institutions and social media platforms all pushing for propagandic style material and content. It's really, really important. Like, how I've been asked this, you know, quite a few times. Like, how do you stay focused on that? By doing this, taking time for myself to understand not just myself, who I am, dealing with that darkness that I may have from years ago. It took me a very long time. Again, I put out a video, 5 Steps to Any Change. That's where I learned it from. I came from that whole depression, anxiety, you know, riddled life where it's every single day just driving down and further and further, and it goes really, really deep. That's a story for another time. But man, I was down in the dumps. I'd take things in my recovery time to get back to any sort of state of normal, to do, just to function. You know, like, my anxiety attacks would literally shut my body down for temporary paralysis. Like, I wouldn't be able to move. I could literally feel my heartbeat erratic, and all these things because I didn't know how to let go of stress, and I didn't know how to do it. And I think I talk about that in another one on 2 different ways to do it. But I couldn't separate between my lower brain my downstairs brain and my upstairs brain. Okay, they were operating almost separately from each other. And when the downstairs brain overrides your upstairs brain, again, all your logic and your problem solving and all that stuff goes out the window, which is why you can't talk to people when they're in an emotional state. You always see we've all experienced this, especially if you worked in customer service. Some customers coming at you with a bunch of anger and stress, just using you as an emotional dumpster just because they can, because they're so emotionally distraught, because corporate America literally drives you to stay in that fight or flight mode, and you don't take that time for yourself to just go and relax and get back to zero so you can continue on without being controlled by other functions of your brain, like your emotional brain. So, taking time for yourself, understanding the two different types of brain and how they are actually divided in yourself seamlessly. You can switch back and forth seamlessly. Again, you can just think of an old memory, something that upset you from way back in the day, and you'll start getting riled up. That simple. You could be having the greatest day and someone said, hey, you ever experienced this? And you're like, oh, yeah, that. Yeah. Screw that. This is what happened. Here's how it went down. And no. Negative. Letting that darkness seep through. Darkness will seep through the cracks should you let it. That's why be more vigilant about yourself. Being able to do your spiritual development for yourself. To get yourself back to zero. I've mentioned this. One of my old sayings that I've said a lot is finding the balance in the imbalance. Okay? You cannot fly forward if you can't take off properly because you don't have a footing to do so. People are talking, how do I get better? How do I get better at doing things? Or how do I get out of depression and stuff like that? It starts with you and all your actions to do it. And then the consistency to continue it on. That's the only way out of it. No one person, no one thing is going to help you. And that's why I really abhor the whole idea of using drugs to chemically enhance or change your mind to do it. What happens when the drugs run out? Why do you think a lot of people, when they go clean, it takes them so long to just get over it, getting over the substance controlling them, and then two, why they slip back into it? Their bodies have literally adapted to take in that stimulus to control that environment, and the body will literally crave it because that's what it's used to. Okay, the same thing goes with memories and how many experiences you have. Not taking those times for yourself. This is why a lot of people that have a lot of negative things happen in their life, a lot of it starts with they have negative attitudes because they're jaded by it. And there's nothing wrong with it, but I've seen it happen. As soon as the moment they start changing and adding more, it's like two different levels, right? If you got this much darkness but only this much light, you're always going to see darkness. You're always going to see evil. So taking time for yourself, spending time on doing, that's why I love doing the arts and entertainment and stuff like that. You start building more and more and more of that light to counteract that, to give you some sort of sense of balance. But it has to start first. If it's off balance, find your footing first and then build. And it's going to be a long journey out. Man, it took me 25 years to get out from where I was at to get where I'm at today. And I have systems upon systems and a lot of stuff that I learned because I've been the most vigilant out of anybody. Okay? All without any sort of drugs or pills pushed on me. I did it all myself because of that. Pulled myself out from anxiety because it was just back then it was like, oh, we're just having anxiety attacks. Oh well, I don't know what else to tell you. That was it. That was literally my doctors from when I was in high school. Well, it's anxiety. Oh well. Panic attack, I guess. Nothing, man. And I'm happy they never try to push pills because I hated taking pills anyway. I still hate taking pills. If I'm sick, I'd rather have my body, I'd rather have my body work it out. It's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to adapt. Now, again, if you have a legitimate, say, deficiency, then yeah, take the pills. You need those pills. or your body doesn't take, pull in certain nutrients that it needs to. Fine. There's nothing wrong with that. However, trying to chemically change that, honestly, this is why I've stayed away from even recreational drugs all my life. And again, it's not because, people are like, oh man, you just don't know, it alters your perception. Like, yeah, it absolutely does. But even from doing, like drinking, like alcohol, and even tobacco, I used to smoke too, and now I quit those. Those are the only recreational drugs I've ever tried. But even then, I know it alters your perception. I saw it, and then I stopped it. Now I'll have a drink here and there just for the flavor. I won't do it to get drunk, not anymore. So, again, two different sides of your brain. Learn to operate both. Learn to recognize both. The first step to change, any change in your life, is awareness. So, be aware that there are two sides of your brain. Be aware that they're closely integrated, and be aware that there's a way to get out of one or the other. And typically, it's your downstairs brain you want to try to get out of, because it is the most irrational version of it, and where you may put yourself into a position where you may be hurting people that you care about. Especially in this political landscape of this whole false dichotomy of bipartisanship that's out there. As if everyone can be either from column A or column B. That's not even how people work. It's not always black and white. Most people exist in levels of gray. In the many, many levels of gray in between. And bulking them together is wrong. Why? Because that's, again, purpose of propaganda. Purpose of propaganda is to elicit an emotional response, so then you become easily manipulated, and so they can drive that narrative to whichever side that they want. And both authoritarian style mentalities, from left, right, whatever, use it. Both of them. It's not a one or the other. Both of them use that. And you wonder why extremism, when people go to the extreme and they start using extreme language, how that drives it. Yeah. I used to say, there was one quote I used to say a few years ago. I think it was even before this last administration. It's like, everyone always argues about left and right, left wing or right wing, not realizing that America needs both wings to fly. Now you got talks of people literally getting on board and advocating for shutting down one side or the other and just shifting them out completely. I'm like, come on, man. Starts with you. Starts with me. Starts with everyone individually and collectively taking the time for themselves to just and reset themselves. Okay? Unplug. Take your time. And just relax. I'm going to be doing more of these videos anyway, because there's so much to learn, and consistency is key to any sort of change. Consistency, maintenance, all these things, again, that I've talked about over and over again, and why I decided to do all these videos. So if you like this type of stuff and wanted to learn it from not just a physiological stance, but a little bit more from a spiritual stance. And again, I've mentioned this in other videos too. When I talk about spirituality, I'm not talking about religion, even though they are generally closely related. It's not necessarily the same thing. So when I talk about spirituality, I'm literally talking about internal reflection and how you can use that to better yourself, to become the best version of yourself. So if you like that and you want to hear more about that, please hit the subscribe button, because I will be doing way more of these videos. This is what I want to do for 2021. I've waited too long to get to doing these, and I want to be able to spread what I've learned over the past 3 decades of trying to do all this stuff. Okay, so take a breath. That's another thing, cleansing breath. You ever find yourself sighing? It's literally your body automatically trying to activate your vagus nerve to lower your heart rate, lower your stress. It's built in. And if you can consciously make yourself do things like deep abdominal breathing, taking those times to control the breath, you can do it yourself instead of just waiting for it. I don't ever sigh anymore. I don't, because I take that time for myself. Now that may be a personal, it's just how I am, but I noticed that once I did it more, I didn't never sight anymore because I didn't have to. I automatically put myself in those positions. Anyway, again, deep inhale or slow exhale, or slow inhale, slower exhale. Works for so many different things. Alright guys, we'll catch you guys later. Have a good night or a good day, whatever time you see this. Bye. Hey, thanks for watching my video. If you like this, again, hit the subscribe button down at the bottom, and check out our RPG IRL shirts from the Wandering Celtsman. Absolutely love these shirts and what they represent. We'll be adding more of these over this next year, so check them out at thewanderingceltsman.com, and we'll have links to that somewhere down below.